After the closest finish in ERL INDYCAR Series history and the tied closest finish in ERL history, we have arrived in Mexico for race number 5 of the ERL INDYCAR Series as the drivers now crawl away from the start-finish line on their pace lap behind the pace car. Milsas-Mica, he will start this race on pole in the 11 car. Behind him will be O'Quee and Niven Colby, championship leader, driving car number 37. He's only scored in 2 races so far, but both of those scores have been race wins in the first 2 races. Then, Linus Eriksson behind him, Ewa Puff, Hexel Mark, one of 2 drivers starting this race in the hards, then Kwan Todoroki, who won last time out. First race win for a Japanese driver since season number 15. Then Lil Buns, Mickey Ongurevich, David Camino, Lewis Olsen, and Enoch-Yu, the top 12. Behind them, Max Bortka, Carlson Thornberg, a disappointing qualifying performance for the Chip Ganassi driver in the 97. Then it's Tommy, Elliot Zelli, Francis Austin, quite a ways away from his own teammate. He's going to be hoping to try and close up to him throughout this race. Then Saf San, 2 pinnacles of Sarlof Kynes and Ghosted, Sebastian Messian, and TJ Davis driving for Newman Haas, who after this season will become KV Racing, as they now head towards the final sector on this pace car lap on board with the blue and yellow Sims Motorsport car of Milsas-Mica. The Polish driver will lead us to the green flag. A few days after the Warsaw Prix in the ERL Formula E Series, pace car will come into the pits at the end of this lap as they come through the stadium section of this Mexico City circuit. Rounding the final turn, can Milsas win today? Boogity, 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 let's go racing, boys! Everyone's staying single file heading into turn number 1. This is the longest run down into the opening turn of any track on the calendar. Roughly about half a kilometer, maybe a little bit less as they come through, keeping it out of the walls. That's the main aim of everyone, and they failed at that. Kwan Todoroki out of this race. Already, he's on the wall, in fact. And for the man who left Brazil, absolutely joyous, he will leave Mexico as the race itself starts. An unfortunate start to the weekend, or rather an unfortunate start and end to the day for the Japanese driver trying to go for the ERL INDYCAR Series Championship. 7 races after this one, 6 races after this one, I believe. Get back underway. Niven Colby with the fastest second sector right behind Quee. Keeping it on the track is the main aim of all the drivers, because grip's going to be an issue, and in fact someone's gone off already in the 3rd. Ghosted's been given a 5-second time penalty. You can see them going 3 wide, possibly even 4, going through the stadium section. It's a part of the track where you should only be able to do 2 wide, but of course these things, they aren't set in stone. Further up the road, Milsas-Mica, that's Colby! Niven Colby out of the Prix, and that's Ewa Puff also out in Mexico. And the Mexico City Grand Prix here in the ERL INDYCAR Series has already taken out 3 drivers in 2 laps. This is a 17-lap race. If they're all going to start crashing at turn number 1, this is going to be a long, long race today. But we get back underway on lap 3 of 17. On board with Carson Thornberg, who's now up into 11th behind Max Bortka. The 2 power drivers in 8th and 9th right now. Milsas with a track limits warning. He was lucky to keep it out of the walls. Linus Eriksson now up into 3rd position. More notably, Hexel Marks up into 4th. Fastest lap goes to Linus, a 109. Lewis Olsen sets a 109.283. Camino goes even better, 108.616 for the former ERL Formula E Series driver. Quee tries to go around the outside and puts Milsas into the wall. Out of the race goes Milsas-Mica, and Quee inherits the race lead in Mexico. Now Linus Eriksson's on the back of the hyperdrive driver. That's 4 wrecks in the opening 3 laps. And they've all effectively been disconnected. This might be one long race. On board with the Target-powered Power Motorsport driver of Enoch Q in the 25. His main goal is to try and keep it in the points, keep it running. In fact, for all the drivers right now, I think the winning formula is just to keep that car pointing in a straight line and keep it out of the walls. Easier said than done, especially down at turn number 1. Sebastian Messian's running a fastest second sector of anyone. So we're looking at Carson Thornburg, currently in 10th position. So we're on to laps 5 of 17. Ghosted with a first track limits warning. He gets 3 more of those, and that's a slam dunk time penalty. On board with Linus, looking for a way to get past, and he's gone airborne! Facing the wrong direction. Qui's gone out of it, however. Eriksson's facing backwards at the first chicane. And in fact, full course yellows, that's Tommy out of this race as well. Sebastian Messian goes out of this race too. And that's the big one here in Mexico. Eriksson's out as well. Ghosted facing the wrong direction. My goodness me. All of that at the same opening turn. Ghosted. He's got it back up and running again. For Linus Eriksson, it was a move that should have worked, that could have worked, but just didn't on Oqui, who now has 3 seconds advantage over his nearest rival in Miki Ongirovic. Full course yellow, full course caution is going to be ending. And we are now back underway. Qui's mediums beginning to show signs of their age. As Girovic, can he keep it out of the wall? He does, but you can see how tricky it's becoming for some of these drivers to keep it out of the barriers. With how worn their tires are beginning to be. Elliot Deli with a second track limits warning as he drops behind Saf San, and he decides to pull into pit row at the end of his 5th lap as Qui comes into the wall. Out of this race goes Oqui. For the first time in ERL series history, a driver from a driver from Pakistan, rather, will be leading. Hexel Mark in the 68 Revolution racing car. He leads in Mexico. In a race that has seen effectively one driver crash out every lap. If that continues to the end of this race, we will have 5 drivers remaining. 5. The minimum point scored will be 10. That will be impactful for the championship for some of these drivers. Although, many of the title favorites are in fact out of this. In fact, I'm pretty sure all the race winners are out of this one. Camno getting a 5-second time penalty for causing a collision further back, and in fact, into the wall goes Lewis Olsen. He spun for a second there. In fact, Camno weaving to avoid, I believe, Lewis. 10 laps to go. As Saf San getting a track limits warning. That's his first of the day. Those softs are absolutely shredded. Ghosted getting his second track limits warning. But Hexel Mark sticking out front, and he's in the wall, losing his front wing. Further back, Girovic spinning on his own, in fact. Olsen as well. Many drivers in the barriers down at the first chicane. How have they managed to do this? There's just so little grip out there, and in fact, Saf San also hitting the barriers and facing the wrong direction. And that's also Ghosted into the barriers, Ghosted into the wall. Deli hitting Saf San, and onto the wall goes the Indian. We're back under green flags, but Deli now with a 5-second time penalty, which he'll have to serve in the pits. Hexel Mark's still leading, and in fact his lead has only grown, but he's missing his front wing, and he's going to lose a lot of downforce due to that. He'll pit at the end of this lap, hopefully. Lil Buns will maybe possibly be the race leader after that, but look at the state of those softs. They're weaving just to try and keep the car on the track. In fact, Camino closing in, Camino passing Carson Thornburg. In come the top 3. Seems like it's time for the green flag stops. Ghosted getting his 3rd track limits warning as there goes Elliot Deli down the inside. Staying out might not be the smartest strategy. Saf San getting a track limits warning. Here comes Camino into the wall, and out of the race goes David Camino. Carson Thornburg leads, but he's had a tailspin. Max Bortkar now leads in Mexico. Carson Thornburg's dropped down so many positions. Francis Austin with a 5-second time penalty. Thornburg, he should have been leading. He's down in 5th position now. Unbelievable what we are seeing here in Mexico City. You know, the ERL's first race in Mexico, there were barely any green flag laps because we still had the pace car to clear up any issues. That's been removed because we believe that full course cautions can be a quicker alternative, and they have worked so far. Max Bortkar is your race leader here in Mexico, on board with the number 29 for Andretti, and he's weaving like a madman. Salas Kines in the 55 further back. TJ Davis dropping down to 4th position in what is rumored to be his final start. Into the wall has gone Elliot Deli on the same lap as his teammate. Into the side of him goes an Q. Gurovic comes to the back of him as well. Ghosted and Saf San closing in as well. Ghosted went onto the hard tyres. I've had no time to talk about tyre strategy just because of how hectic this race has been. On board with Hexel Mark, who leads this race again, and out of the race goes Lil Buns in the number 5. Wall rides to a stop with 8 laps to go. Lewis Olsen up into 2nd position. This has been one of those races. One of those races where the only action that you see on track is drivers spearing into the barriers. We even saw 2 big ones. Potentially we might see another one, because we're down to 12 runners here in Mexico. We're back underway. Elliot Deli rearing the field. His teammate is the driver in front of him, but he's actually closer. I was going to say he's closer to Hexel Mark, but he's not. Hexel getting a 3rd and final warning. The track limits, he gets another one, and that is a time penalty, a 5-second time penalty. Pretty sure everyone right now has either served their penalties, or if they had a penalty, they are now out of this race and therefore don't have to serve it. Lewis Olsen setting a new fastest lap, 108.466. Full course yellow, ghosted out of the race, and that's in the stadium section. Bortkar comes into the pits. Many drivers coming into the pits. Clouds darkening over Mexico. That can only mean one thing. It is now raining here in the Central American country. I have to get my mind around these things somehow. But it is raining here in Mexico City. With half the grid out of this race, anyone will win this. I'm not saying anyone can win this. I'm saying anyone will win this. The top 4 are all on the wrong compound tyres for the current conditions, and yellows in the opener. That's for Max Bortkar, who slipped in those wet conditions. Salas Kines getting a time penalty. It's the big one here in Mexico. All of the drivers who have just come into the pits for intermediate tyres have all hit the wall. Hexel Mark comes in. Lewis Olsen will come in. And hopefully an Q will come in with Mikion Gurovic, who's gone very deep into that opening turn and has even been given a 5-second time penalty for causing a collision. No, it's for track limits. But we're back underway, 7 laps to go, and for the guys behind Salas, there's no hope for them winning at this point, I don't think. They are way too far behind the leading pack to benefit from them pitting, and in fact, the only man who has benefited is the Norwegian in the number 95. Lewis Olsen leads the Mexico City Grand Prix. It's a race that no one has wanted to lead, and it's a race that I don't think the leader on the final lap will lead, and out of the race goes Hexel Mark. He's been leading for so long in this race, and in fact also out Max Bortkar. We're down to 9 races. I was going to say everyone who finishes is going to score points, but everyone who finishes is going to score at least 2 points, because Hexel is out, so is Max. New front wing required for Elliot Deli. For Chip Ganassi Racing right now, it has been one of those absolutely hellish days, but if they can just finish, they might be able to salvage a half decent result out of all of this. And wall riding goes Carson Thornburg. Out of the race behind him goes Francis Austin. Oh my goodness, how hard is it to keep it on the track? Olsen gets a 5-second time penalty for track limits. So I guess it must be very hard in these wet conditions. 6 laps left to run. And Q gets a 5-second time penalty. On board with Mickey Ongurovic in 3rd position of the 8 drivers still in this race. And the only team to have both of their drivers still in it is the team that's had to do the most stops, that being Chip Ganassi. They're currently 7th and 8th. Carlos Sainz further back with a track limits warning, and out of the race goes Lewis Olsen. Lewis Olsen loses it in the wet and is out in Mexico. TJ Davis getting a 5-second time penalty for track limits, and a Q for the first time in a long while in the ERL series, or rather ERL league in general. He's leading a race. Carson Thornburg coming in to fix that bent as hell front wing. Elliot Deli with a 5-second time penalty for track limits. The only man without any penalties is this guy, Mickey Ongurovic. And out of the race, further ahead, further behind even, that's Saf San. Out of the Grand Prix, rather. The Grand Prix of Mexico City. 3 drivers out on effectively the same lap for an Q. And in fact, for so many drivers today, I don't know if they wanted to finish. There have been 5 laps left to run. There are 5 laps left to run, with 5 drivers still in this race. Make that 4, Gurovic getting his first track limits warning. If he can get himself to 5 seconds behind an Q, he can still salvage a race win out of this. 4 laps to go, and Q leads us to green. Carlos Sainz gets his 3rd track limits warning of the day. Carson Thornburg no longer has a 5-second time penalty. Is into the wall, goes to Q. 2nd track limits warning, as he's lost part of his front wing as well. The wet conditions here in Mexico causing many issues. Into the wall goes Mickey on, and he's got front wing damage as well. He ran over an Q's. Thornburg out of the race goes Carlos Sainz. Thornburg got a track limits warning, but the Chip Ganassi, they're at the back of the pack, and they are still going to be on the podium today. 33 seconds off the race lead, and they're going to be on the podium. That's going to be one of the biggest podium margins in the entirety of the ERL. And Q for Power Motorsport. He still leads, but with front wing damage. Gurovic is behind him, also with front wing damage. As we now get back underway, struggling for grip in these wet and tricky conditions are the 4 drivers still left in this race. Gurovic coming through, out of the race goes Mickey Ongurovic. All the drivers who finished today will be on the podium in this race of attrition. I wouldn't even call it a race. It's a demolition derby and a half. For the Chip Ganassi guys, they're not gaining anything from an Q's pit stop. An Q's still going to be leading after this full course caution. Full course yellow is ending in one of the most destructive races in the entire history of the ERL league. Yes, I do understand that I'm basically saying ERL L by saying ERL league, and both Chip Ganassi drivers with penalties, and out of the race goes an Q. 3 laps to go. We ride on board with the race leader, and he's out. This is going to be down to between teammates. Elliot Deli and Carson Thornburg are the 2 drivers left in this race in Mexico. If they can finish, that's going to be big points in terms of Chip Ganassi's time in the ERL INDYCAR series. That's going to be big points for both drivers in that bid for the championship, and for Deli, that's going to help him get seen by more of the drivers in the ERL Formula E series, a series that he's raced in 1 race, which, tied with Scribble Live, is the shortest ERL Formula E career so far. Oh, the Deli poised to make a return. We stay on board with Elliot. Race leader in the blue helmet in the 38. Track limits warning. Honestly, I'm pretty sure the drivers, the two of them still out there on track, they are wanting this race to end as quickly as possible. 2 laps to go. It's Elliott Daly from teammate Carson Thornburg, the two drivers of the 22 still in this race. This is absolutely insane. It's coming through the chicane. Out of the race goes Elliott Daly. Elliott Daly out in Mexico. One driver is currently left. Carson Thornburg in the number 97. If he can keep his car in this for the next lap, 2 laps and a half, he will win the Mexico City Grand Prix. He will be the only finisher today, and he will actually take home the record it alone for being part of the race with the least amount of finishers that actually had finishers. Just the one in the ERL. We've had a race in Mexico before where there were 0 finishers, but now we're seeing one that might just only have the one. We're watching the 97 in the red helmet. If you want us to look at another driver, we can't. They are all out of the race. Out of the 22 that started, 21 have DNF'd. It is the penultimate lap here in Mexico. Carson Thornburg leads. Carson Thornburg is in the middle of the pack, and he's also at the back of the pack. He alone is the pack as he comes through the chicane, and he's out! No finishes in Mexico! That is absolutely disappointing to see. What a farce we've just seen in Mexico. 0 finishes. Every single one of the drivers on the starting lineup have crashed out across 16 of the 17 laps that were run. The championship standings is the same as it was coming into this race. The constructors is the same as it was coming into this race. So we'll see you guys next time then when the ERL INDYCAR series returns with hopefully a race that actually finishes with drivers.